What if the trauma is yours but not yours? In other words, what if it's okay? And there's certain constructive things we have to go with here. What if it's past life trauma? What if it's ancestral trauma, family trauma that's been carried on that's not per se yours, right? You didn't come up with it in this lifetime, but somehow it's been transferred to you to deal with on whatever level, however it got there. Does that function in the same way in terms of how to get rid of it, or how to not really get rid of it, but how to metabolize it?
Have you heard that thing about if you want to know your past life's karma, look at your current situation. If you want to know your future karma, look at your current life.
So either way, you're looking at your current life.
Yeah. No. If you want to, well, I guess so.
Well,
look at the foot you're on.
Look at the foot you're on. On the surfboard while you're surfing, you're crazy.
So, yeah.
Right.
So, so there's a bunch of things you said there. One would be epigenetic trauma. So this is something Rachel Yehuda, who's a researcher, really brilliant researcher in New York at NYU, has, I think, contributed a lot to, which is that individuals who have even grandparents who have experienced a traumatic event. In this case, they looked at Holocaust survivors, people that were in concentration camps, and I believe one of their results was that they had a 300 times. It was a very high number, let's say it was three times higher likelihood of presenting to an emergency room for a psychiatric problem. Another study I read was about mice, and I didn't do it. It was an animal study. I just read it. They took mice and they exposed them to some aroma, and had electricity on the floor, and so they were obviously creating post-traumatic stress. They were pairing a smell with a trauma, and then giving them the smell and measuring their level of physiological arousal, how anxious they got. Well, that worked, but then their kids, the mice kids who never got shocked and smelled that scent, still had the same physiologic response. And their kids. And it went for almost 7 generations.
That's interesting. So 7 generations is a thing.
Seems to be.
Wow.
Seems to be. And so there is that epigenetic piece that has been, that we can kind of base some studies on, and, whatever the framework that we call science, to say, yes, okay, there is that. Then you brought up something else about past lives. Have you ever heard of Brian Weiss, the psychiatrist, the book Many Lives, Many Masters?
Yes.
That's a pretty cool book.
I've heard the title, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He experienced, I guess, some a patient, I believe, who was communicating with these between lives beings and was able to tell him things that nobody else would have known. And this was actually before the internet, obviously.
Right.
Sure.
But also personal things. I found this book to be really compelling, and there was a therapeutic method called LBL. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
LBL therapy, lives between lives. Yeah. And so after Anna died, I heard about it, and so I wanted to do it because I thought maybe I would get to talk to her. Yeah. No, I didn't. That didn't happen. But I had a really rich experience for 3 hours, going back in time to a Portuguese sailing ship that I was on. That I was murdered. And I was left in the Hawaiian Islands. And it was actually before, I think that happened before I was going.
Okay.
Before I got the job there. But then the things that I thought were weird about that experience. So I'm not sitting here saying that was real. I was under deep hypnosis. I had this experience in my mind.
Sure.
But what I did notice was a few things. First of all, the ship that I saw, and I didn't even know that the Portuguese were in Hawaii. Did you know that?
I did.
Heavily.
Okay.
Heavily.
Interesting.
They have a game they call Portuguese Horseshoes, which is because the Portuguese brought the game there.
Wow.
So they call them portigui. So I said, wow, that's weird. I didn't even know that. And then I looked at like the ships that they were sailing, and it literally was like there were details in it that really shocked me that I saw in this dream state.
Okay.
But again, we could say maybe I saw that somewhere or whatever. I mean, and it was just in my mind's eye.
Well, I think obviously there's a lot of individuals that have done past life regressions and had similar experiences, not saying the ship, but just reliving kind of moments from that life.
And so maybe there is enough, evidence there anecdotally to pile on and say, okay, maybe there is something to it.
Sure.
But the most interesting thing, or one of the interesting things that came out of it was afterwards, I had been dealing with very bad lower back pain at that point in time. Mm-hmm. The next day, I went home. I went right to sleep. It was exhausting. I went to sleep, slept till the next morning, woke up, went to make coffee, and I'm making coffee, and I'm like, my back doesn't hurt. And it was exactly where I got stabbed before I got thrown off the boat.
Well, and I was going to say, they've always talked about when people are born with beauty marks or scars or whatever else, it's typically they're saying that might have been how you died in your past life. And from that perspective, that back pain. I also have heard a lot where when you're gravitating towards, events in history or whatever else you possibly could have lived in that time period, there's also the notion that, from any perspective on that front, like even when you go to a place or you're living in a place, maybe you kind of gravitate more towards going there because that's familiar to you, because in your past life you were actually there. I had an experience with a past life regression where I was actually reliving the night before D-Day. And I saw, we were basically in a tent seeing kind of, the maps and everything laid out and the battle plans and whatever else. Then just waking up and actually landing on one of the beaches. I honestly am not sure exactly where, but just kind of living through that. And then from there, I felt like I didn't actually die on D-Day, but I think it was shortly thereafter. And, I'm not sure, like literally every year around D-Day, I always have this same reoccurring dream. So was that a past life? I don't know. But I've always had a fascination with World War II. I've also always gravitated towards, Morristown area, New Jersey, and that sort of thing, and also Italy. So I think maybe, some of my past lives, if you believe in reincarnation and that sort of thing, perhaps that's what I gravitate most towards. Even as a gladiator in ancient Rome or whatever it was, I did have a past life regression like that as well at one point, so...
That's an interesting point that he's bringing up, because I think the same modality works when you do psychedelics, where it takes you to that other place, and whatever happens in that other place, it then creates enough separation between you and the trauma to be able to either see it or work on it or refit it together, whatever. I'm not sure what the modality is to actually metabolize these things, but however that works. Would you tell us a little bit about your psychedelic experience and how that worked for you, or what it was able to do for you? Which one? Any of them. Whichever one you think is the most
well, this was when
transformative.
It was that one.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
It was that one when I came back from windsurfing. And, I was still, I don't know, this might have been, maybe a year and a half still, or 2 years after I lost a child. So I was still in a good bit of grief. And what I mean by grief, I mean, like, you'd be having a conversation with me and I'd just start crying pretty much all the time. I tripped balls. Can I say that?
Sure.
Yeah, I sat down at the table where all the mushrooms were laid out for the fudge. There was a party that night. They had a concert. This Gold Don Juan, great guy, singer, really good. He's local Maui, but super cool guy.
Okay.
Was where his house was, and he was doing the party. That's right. Because I had to call him to get picked up, because it was a little weird. You think psychedelics are all good and they help everyone, but the one that was making the fudge brownies started flipping out and breaking out the house.
Wow.
So yeah. So that was weird. That was a weird part of that experience. But ended up at this concert at it was a Thai restaurant on the beach. They closed it down and they rented it, so it was just and I was on the grass looking up, and I went up out of everything, like where the island, you could see the island and then see the earth and then see how far everything was and how it was out in this wilderness. And I ended up just getting up and walking out the Hana Highway.
Okay.
Have you ever been to Maui?
No.
There's a famous road there called the Hana Highway. Many people just drive back and drive. But
is that the road to Hana?
Road to
Hana. As they call it? Yeah.
And so I just started walking in the middle, it was nighttime, and there's nobody on the road. Mm-hmm. And just ended up at one of the beaches down there, and was just by myself on earth, on this rock, just being. And it was just a balancing experience.
Sorry, I just had a thing. It's a little bit of a roller coaster for me talking to you. There's I'm going through a whole bunch of feelings and things are coming up, but it's very interesting.
Okay.
So
I thought I said something that affected you.
Yeah, no, just because it takes me back to some of the experiences that I've had doing those kinds of things, and it can often be pretty visceral.
Yeah.
So,
I was almost in my animal self, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just being. And that's when I met the mushrooms, when I was laying on the grass and just couldn't stop laughing. Oh. And I hadn't laughed, in a long time after that. I hadn't laughed, and just and that was really the beginning of no, that's not true. It was a part of my healing experience. The beginning was when I had a spiritual awakening. I don't know what else to call it.
Can you talk about that?
I can try, but
Please.
It's kind of complicated.
Okay.
And what actually, and if you could, when you're explaining it, could you elaborate as to what you feel triggered it?
The death of my daughter.
Okay.
And it would happen. That was that was the beginning of it.
Sure.
I would say up until then, maybe, I don't think I thought of having a personal relationship with a God. Okay, yes, I believe, I was brought up with religion. I had religion. I didn't, but, it wasn't there in my face. And so it was the 4th of July, and that would have been in 2008. And I was at a funeral for a person who committed suicide. And it just happened to be at the same cemetery that she was buried at. So I just canceled work and took the opportunity to go there. This is actually, I learned later that this time of the year is called the rising of the divine feminine.
Okay.
It has to do, I think, with something a shaman told me this once in Costa Rica. But this time of year, and I don't want to butcher this and mansplain it, so I'm just gonna keep going. But I was at the grave, and I happened to see a butterfly. Okay, and so the butterfly is flying around, and then I leave, and I'm driving down the road, and there's this store that materialized out of thin air. I had gone through this road so many times, and I had never, ever seen this place before. It was not there. It was like I came into a different dimension. Mm-hmm. Okay, there it was. Oh, well, that's a cool store. Let me go in. And it was I felt like I was drawn in to go there, and it was one of those has a psychic doing card readings and crystals and books, esoterica. And I was not that, any way, shape, or form dabbling in the esoteric at this point in time. Mm-hmm. And so I went in like perfectly expecting there to be somebody there being like, hey, welcome, come on in. I was expecting you. So I'm walking around the store like, what the hell am I doing in here? Why am I in here? Why am I in here? And I look up and there's this like rattle. And the rattle, it's a wooden rattle that's made. You could tell it was like a gourd with a stick. It was red and black. It had red and black beads in it. And on one side, it said, Fred, exclamation point, I shit you not. Sorry. It said, Fred, exclamation point, I shoot you not. Okay? And then I turned it on the other side and it said, angel. What had happened about a week prior was a dream where I realized that my kid's name, Anna Joelle, was if you contracted it and took out the letters, it was angel. I saw it in a dream. Whoa. I bought this thing. I took it home. It was a treasure. And the guy who sold its name was there, Mickey Lee, and his phone number. I'm like, called him up. Where did this come from? Central America. It's from the Cuna Indians in Panama. And it is the ceremony where the father makes it for the daughter for the phase of life's transition ceremony.
Wow.
What's the phase of life? What does that mean?
In there, I guess there are girls when they turn 13, they have some ritual
like a
ceremony,
quinceañera kind of
become
thing?
to an adult.
Yeah.
Right. But it had my name and
Wow.
yeah. So I'm like, wow, this is. And I had been spending a lot of time at the grave. And so I went back to the grave the next day. And there's the butterfly again. And the butterfly lands on my hand. And I start giving the butterfly water. And it's drinking water from my hand. Flying around, and I'm talking to it. And it lands on my ear. I have pictures of it. I took my phone out. This is right even when, iPhone 1.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I have a picture of me smiling with that thing on my ear. I walked out of the cemetery with the thing on my ear. It disappeared. And that was the beginning of the sort of journey of going, and then the LBL, but that was the impetus of my thinking, hey, maybe there's something else going on besides this scientific life that I have been trying to live up to now.
That's fascinating. You did ayahuasca.
I have not that I think of. No, DMT. I don't think I've done ayahuasca.
DMT.
I don't think I have had an ayahuasca ceremony. It's my recollection of this right now. No. Yes, I have. Sorry.
Well, he got there, folks. Yeah.
No, I did.
It was a long and winding road.
I did.
He's like, absolutely not. Yes. What are you, Rick James?
No.
No, of course not. Okay. Would you be okay with talking about that? In terms of how, and you don't need to talk about everything. But
I don't think I did it right.
Well,
I don't think I did. I didn't do any cleansing. I didn't do that ceremony that people do beforehand.
Listen, I didn't do mine right, and it still changed my life. Yeah. So it's. I don't know if doing it right, just because that's how some people do it, that might be the optimal way of doing it. But I think just doing it can oftentimes still have a great effect.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be driving when you're doing it.
Oh no! What? How is that even possible? What? How do you? You
so my friend, one of my friends,
great motor vehicles.
Here's what happened. One of my friends said he was a shaman, and he said, "Hey, you know that tea you asked for? I got you some." And I was like, "I don't remember asking for any tea. What is he talking about?" I put it in your fridge. I said, "Okay, thanks." So we had to drive somewhere,
right?
And I had the tea. Oh, this is good. And then about, 20, 30 minutes into the ride, it clicked. Oh, that was ayahuasca. So I said, honey, I think you have to drive. That was when I took ayahuasca.
But without doing the MAOI inhibitor,
I think it was.
It would have been very mild.
I don't think it was. It was not a very intense experience.
But you know as well as I do, if you don't lower the blood-brain barrier, it's just going to be metabolized in your stomach. So irrespective of how strong the concoction was, if you don't have the MAOI coupled with it.
But do you think it could have already been mixed?
It's not typically mixed. In fact, you're supposed to take them about a half hour apart to allow the MAOI to do its job to lower the blood-brain barrier, and then you have your experience.
Okay.
And what ends up kicking you out of the experience is when the MAOI inhibitor wards off. Because once that happens, it just kicks you out of that world.
Okay.
And that's how you come back.
I think it's the...
that's why if you're on MAOI inhibitors, you could kill yourself with it because you can have serotonin toxicity. Because you have no ability to then raise the barrier back up.
I don't think it's the blood-brain barrier. I think it's the enzyme that's being inhibited in the gut.
Okay.
So there's two MAOI. There's two monoamine oxidase. One is in the gut and one is in the brain.
Got it.
And I think you have to take the one that inhibits the one in the gut so it gets to the brain.
So it gets to the brain.
It's the same with Parkinson drugs like L-Dopa. It's the same thing. You have to do the same thing with it. Because I think I'm not an expert in it.
Have you used things like Mucuna or Kana?
I've seen the mark of the frog.
No, that's Bufo.
Okay, Kano. I think it's called Kano.
Oh, so that's a little different. No, I'm talking about these are like roots and things that are just give you. They're like mild euphorians and things like that. Okay, so but you bring up a good point. So have you tried Bufo? Did you do the thing where
I didn't.
No. Okay.
I didn't want to throw up like that.
Yeah.
And there can be, I mean, one of the complications of that is death.
Well, death is a complication, certainly.
And I just didn't. I've never seen that as being. I don't know, something that's I felt needed.
I want to talk a little bit about, and then we're going to get into your technology because I think it's fascinating, and so we could. But can we talk about men's issues for a little?
Yeah,
bit?
I wanted to.
Yeah,
I was hoping
please.
we would.
And could we talk about that a little bit? Like, how do you see trauma occurring in men as regards women? Is therapy different for men as regards and women?
Can I also just elaborate on that? I also wanted to ask because obviously I would say for men especially, there's almost like a stigmatism.
Stigma.
Stigma. Sorry. There is a stigma that, they might not necessarily go and seek help. They feel like that's not masculine or whatever else. There's also...
Well, it's not.
But I think nowadays there's also this stigma as well where, if you're a firearms owner in certain states, you might get flagged or whatever else. It's like, how can you circumvent that first and foremost? And then to Alex's point, from that perspective, kind of what are the common health issues or mental health issues that individuals face, men versus women? And how did that get treated?
Good question.
It's about 47 questions, but
no. I think it started and ended with the same question, which was about men and women's differences. In looking at brain scans and trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, there are differences in the brains. Their brains change differently. So, like men tend to, I think they get more impulsive with trauma and PTSD and tend to have more of the re-experiencing. And I think there's more of fear reaction, amygdala. The amygdala gets higher volume in women. But there was definitely a study a few years ago showing the differences. And I hope I got that right. But so yes, it would go to then further down. I mean, just thinking about this outright. So if you're going to have differences in the brain, then the brain is going to be, our brains are really just master glands in our bodies. I see that it is as a kind of a chemical clock, but it has to deal with the timing of all the hormones and everything that's regulated. And so we have different hormonal ratios, men and women. I mean, if I'm not being political by saying that. At least what I learned in school. So the way that one would want to address it probably might be different too. I mean, for me, it was a lot of risking my life on things or feeling like I was. Adrenaline, resetting that system with, in that particular case, surfing, but physical activity. I mean, maybe that has a higher component for individuals who are showing a certain form of behavior in relation to trauma or life events. And the other question was about stigma. Yeah, I mean, what do you think what is that stigma? What is it? What is it? Like, what are the thoughts behind it? What are the thoughts behind the stigma?
I mean, from my personal perspective, and obviously it's just my opinion, I think that a lot of men are probably too stubborn or proud to say they need help. I think there's also a societal stigma that it's like, hey, if I'm going to see a psychiatrist or some kind of medical professional for, say it's for addiction or overcoming trauma, I think they look at that as, I think men in general, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we're fixers, right? We try to fix everything. We're logical beings. So from that perspective, I think most individuals would say, oh, there should be a way I could fix this on my own.
The other piece of it is, and as we always know, it's skating that edge, right? Because if you fall on either side, it gets a little... So society now has also thrown in, if you don't get this and you just want to be a man on your own, that's toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity.
So, you have the other part of the equation, which is just, it's almost forcing you to do certain things or telling you that, acting out in a way that is traditionally male could now be seen as toxic or whatever the case. I'm not saying there isn't such a thing as toxic masculinity in certain cases, possibly, but or maybe that there's something out there that could be.
So a gender is toxic.
No, not on the whole, certainly, but certain behavior.
So there has to be toxic femininity too.
I'm sure there is. Sure there is.
So then it would have to be just toxic.
Everything's toxic.
No, it would just be toxic behavior.
Toxic behavior, yeah, absolutely, without the gender component.
Yeah,
right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
which would be behavior that is not conducive to either society, Babylon, as we call it, Babylon, or something that could lead to violence or other things that are not necessarily what you want.
I abhor violence.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's an answer. And so if that's what we're reflecting as toxic masculinity, I mean, that's violent behavior.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just bring it up because it's being talked about currently, right? So, it's something that...
And I do think there's a stigma that when you talk about traditional gender roles, as an example,
that's for
I think that's really where there's a movement, obviously, and I'm not being condescending or anything else. Whatever everybody's opinion is, you can formulate that on your own. But, I think it's just when you look at those traditional gender roles, I think a lot of people nowadays call that toxic masculinity.
I see. You know how when the housing market goes way, 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 it just goes crazy and then they do a correction?
Yeah.
I think we're headed for a correction. I think that society is going to end up having a correction here because it's not working.
Yeah.
Part of the, I think, success of English as a language is our ability to speak and express ourselves and conduct ourselves in a way that conveys direction and emotion and is specific. And so then having an editorial conversation that's the side conversation to the actual narrative is destructive, and I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's efficient, and I think we tend to be lazy. And so I don't think we're going to have to keep having all of it's going to go back with I think generationally. Because if this worked, then wouldn't it already be working?
Well, yeah. I mean, you get into sort of the idea of it being a modern Victorian age where no one's saying what they're actually saying. They're just talking around all of the points because there's an inherent idea.
That's not going to work.
Oh.
Well, then either this gets conquered or it corrects. I mean, it doesn't work. If it worked, we would have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had a lot of time to, do about whatever we want. I mean, people want to think, oh, we're in such a free time and such. No, not really. There's a lot of human history.
Oh yeah.
There's stigma.
Stigma.
I want to destigmatize it. If you have a concussion and you hit your head and you don't know it, you don't think you do. You say, I don't, but I have depression. Oh, but I have anxiety. Oh, I keep going to these therapists. I can't figure out the problem because every time this happens, I lose my temper. Well, that's a problem with your body. Like, that's clear. For I think, men to understand that, like, we can take a machine, read the electrical signature, compare that to a group and say the brain is not operating efficiently in this area and we can do XYZ to help it operate more efficiently, measure that again in the future and determine how you're feeling and actually performing. So in my studies, I see that people's memory gets better, that their reaction time gets better. And I recorded a lot of people doing testing pre and post. So we see like things with like processing speed go up, memory improves. So I think for like guys, it's like, well, wouldn't you want to get and improve? Like, you go to the gym and you want to lift more weights, wouldn't you want to improve your reaction time and your attention and concentration? So the neurofeedback that we do, there's no talking. I don't ask people about their history. I look at the brain, try to get the diagnosis, make a computer protocol, and they watch a video.
Okay, before we get into this, let's just go back and talk about the entirety of the process. So you have a process, what is it called?
It's called QEEG neurofeedback.
Okay. And your company is Minerva?
Minerva.
Minerva, and that is the logo for it. Minerva, okay. And that is Minerva is there you go. So Minerva was the original goddess of knowledge, correct?
Yes.
Athena,
okay.
As it was then put into the Roman religion was Minerva. Mm-hmm. So Minerva seems to be a proprietary understanding of this regards my knowledge,
correct.
So to speak.
You got it.
I love that.
You got it.
I think that's cool.
You actually got it.
So let's talk about Minerva. What is it all about?
So that was the idea. Minerva was the goddess of patron goddess of art, medicine, and warfare. Actually, became warfare, but medicine and art originally. And so I just thought that as far as, and also there was a hat, she had a helmet involved as well. Gallia, I think, was the helmet. So there's the brain scan piece. So we have a brain scanner. That is just, all that is an EEG. It's not, the equipment is so irrelevant. There are so many different ways to get brain waves. So if anybody cares and wants to know what equipment someone uses, it's like go ask a chef at some restaurant what kind of knives they use and see what they say. It's the same thing. What kind of ovens do you have? Mm-hmm. It cooks the food.
Right.
So we acquire the EEG, and then so your brain makes electrical activity. Do you know that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the neurons have because of the charge that they have, because of their regulating different ions, they can have a higher charge in one area and a lower charge in another area. And that depends on if their nerves are firing or not. The electrical impulses are what lead to the chemical impulses. So when you hear about the soup, the serotonin, you've heard serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Monoamine oxidase is the enzyme that activates those neurotransmitters. It sits between the synapse, and so one nerve cell puts out a little packet of, say, serotonin, and the MAO activates the serotonin, then the other cell can react to it, send an electrical impulse down its whole line, and then tell the next cell, hey, here's some information. So we're recording this electrical activity that's happening in the brain through the scalp. And then by taking a sample of that, if we know a group of people, if I have a group of people that have had a concussion, and then we've marked them, they've taken tests for their performance and know how bad their performance is, how good their performance is, we can take the brain waves and then compare them to that group and say, okay, your brain waves seem to match this group of people that have had concussion. What I ended up doing with our machine and our software program called ANA, Advanced Neural Network Analysis, or the Ghost in the Machine, is...
That's beautiful. You named it
I did.
for your daughter.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I get it.
So, because we always have to say it.
Sure.
Now. Yeah, gave her life.
That's beautiful.
So when Anna looks at the EEG, she actually will compare it to like 20,000, 25,000 different scans in a matter of a few seconds, minutes, and then give like percentages of groups of people who most match that. So could say, okay, so 36% chance of post-traumatic stress disorder, 40% chance of OCD, whatever, and take those patterns and say, okay, well, based on these people, they did the following things and got better. Mm-hmm. So, and when I say following things, I mean neurofeedback, I mean specific supplementation. In some cases, people have, there's certain genetic abnormalities that have a huge psych component. Gene testing is so important in mental ill health, really.
Okay.
MTHFR, MTR, and COMT are three biggies that people have deficiencies in, and that then has an association with a large amount of mental health issues. So when we figure out what the protocol is going to be, it's called a protocol. But really what that is a series of, it's an obstacle course your brain has to jump through electrically to make a movie on a screenplay.
Yes.
So you're watching the screen and it gets bright and loud when your brain is doing what the computer is asking it to do, and it gets dark and soft when it's not. And it's doing this for every 400 milliseconds. It's pinging the brain and asking it a digital question saying, hey, can you make your brainwaves in this electrical asana, I call it, electrical posture? Mm-hmm. Can you put your brain in this electrical posture? And if the brain can, and it does really good, and the movie can play, say, 70% of the time, we just make it harder. So we say, okay, now you can do it with this much voltage here. Now do it with this much voltage here. And so we start to decrease, or increase the areas that are the brain is allowed to make the movie play with. And so over time it learns, hey, not only can I make a movie play, but when I do this, it's more efficient. I use less ATP. I use less energy. And then the individual, the person, goes out and say they have trouble with social environments and can't go to the bank to see the bank teller, and they have to put in a deposit. So they have to do something at the bank. This is a real life example. Mm-hmm. So after doing this and lowering the anxiety, the way the brain is responding to the environment, they then are able to go into the bank and do that, which then reinforces what they're doing in the training. So being able to do more things then is a self-reinforcing phenomenon.
Interesting. So you do the genetic testing. That's part of your
We do
deal.
part of the
okay.
yeah.
And you do the brain scanning.
So a real psych eval should include all of the basic labs that we do, right? So basic labs in addition to doing genetic testing, heavy metal testing, allergy testing. Mm-hmm. Brain scan, performance testing. So how quick can you press the button? How good is your attention? How good is your memory? Mm-hmm. Because people are really unreliable about this. And you see some people, it's like, really? And you captain a cruise ship?
Wow, interesting.
Which brings up some reasons why I think it's not as accepted as it could be in the world. What we do, why isn't this used part and parcel for all mental health examinations? Like we use a stethoscope. I mean, it should be. Those things, the brain scan, artificial intelligence, compiling everything together and giving a full understanding of what is the pathway to health.
Okay. So now you have, after all these diagnostic things, mm-hmm. you now have some results that have come up. What do you do to actually, and we don't want to use the word cure, obviously, but to try to get rid of the symptoms of whatever's happening.
Meet the person where they're at.
And what does that mean?
It means that sometimes you go to the doctor and you don't want to hear that you should quit smoking and stop drinking.
Right. So you discuss it with them, like, here's where we are, right? Mm. But then what's the modality for treatment?
So the first thing that I think that needs to be done for what, though? Like a traumatic brain injury? Like
for whatever you come up with, right? So whatever the thing is. Let's say it's a traumatic brain injury.
Okay. Or even, like, we could say Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's or dementia in general.
Dementia in general, that's a better one.
Yeah.
So dementia in general, it's important to know what type of dementia it is. There's like 5 or 6 kinds. Mm-hmm. One is called dementia pugilistica, which is from being hit in the head. Mm. So as individuals age, as we age, our brain becomes less efficient. We lose resources. Our ventricles get bigger. We lose, volume. And so if there is a traumatic brain injury, then it becomes more apparent. It becomes more noticeable because the person has lost resources, as well as there's calcification in areas that aren't used. So the differentiation of what kind of dementia it is.
Like the pineal gland?
Perhaps.
Interesting.
So the that's a whole other can of worms. Right, because then you have to talk about substances. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I said in the beginning it's going to be very difficult to actually cure or treat mental illness, because can we talk about fluoride?
I mean, we can talk about fluoride.
No, we cannot.
Well, without
it's
trying
good for
to
your
speculate
teeth.
On why it's introduced into the waters and so on. But
Well, ask a dentist, what is the LD50 of fluoride?
I don't know what that is.
LD50 is the lethal dose that it kills 50% of the population. Because everything has an LD50. Every drug has an LD50.
Sure.
The higher the LD50, the more safe the drug. Lithium, for example, has the lowest. It's one of the most toxic medications that can be used in medicine. On the other hand, melatonin is huge. That thing, 300 milligrams, I think, is the LD50 on melatonin.
Oh, interesting.
So you'd have to take 300 and you still might not die. You have a 50-50 chance. Don't take 300 milligrams of melatonin.
You heard me here, folks. Yes. No more than
you follow the directions.
$2.99.
Or heal your pineal and you won't need it.
Yes.
So, but these are things where, is it really bad? Is it needed? Does it help your teeth? The science disagrees with your opinion if you say no, right? Harvard has a school of dental public health. Look at who funds it.
Well, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Understood.
So some of these things are difficult to address and treat, right? Some of them, maybe some of the things that you want to maybe even look for, you don't.
But even as society has grown, we do things like, if you watch old Jacques Cousteau episodes, right? So Jacques Cousteau being a scientist, he was on the old Calypso, and they used to chain smoke in the submarine. Yeah. Well, people don't do that anymore because it was not a good idea, but it was socially acceptable at the time. I'd say people used to bring
doctors used to smoke. I've had doctor teachers in medical. Yeah. I mean, I'm old enough to have doctors who smoked in their class while they're teaching.
Absolutely. Or they used to bring mercury home for the kids to play with. Because it was an odd thing. So people don't do that anymore. Right. So at some point we might get to the point where we decide fluoride is not the thing to be doing. We can open ourselves up to that discussion and say that's, in the normal course of whatever society is, it might not be acceptable to put fluoride in water or in toothpaste anymore. We're not there yet, for whatever reason.
Well, it's certainly safe in certain amounts, and that's why I'm asking what's the LD50.
Sure.
We don't know. And then how much are you getting versus me versus you?
Right.
Because there's also no argument that it is toxic. I mean, it's a poison. There's no argument that that's true as well.
Anybody would realize.
Nobody disagrees with that.
Right.
So you brought up the pineal gland, and I know that there's a lot of people that bring the calcification of the pineal gland, sleep problems with having an active third eye chakra, right? That's associated with fluoride. I know that's part of a theory.
They do say that.
Yeah.
Like
but I have no basis to believe it or discount it.
Fluorideless toothpaste. I don't. Just for my own personal choice, I choose not to have fluoride in my toothpaste.
Me too.
Right, and at least in New Jersey, as far as I understand, they don't put it in the water.
They don't?
So no. Oh. They put other stuff, chlorine and other things like that, but no. In New Jersey, my understanding is, at least I could be wrong, but my understanding is they do not put it in the water.
I heard that
Other
it was
states
Morris
may.
County didn't.
Oh, it could be based on a county law. I thought it was statewide, but
I've also heard that it's not necessarily added to water, but because obviously there's so much that gets flushed and recycled, they're saying there's tons of birth control and estrogen that goes into the water and such that influences people as well today. Well, obviously,
there's all kinds of things that could happen.
Well, so there is it's what it's $10 to have a water test kit that is going to test
everything.
30 different components in your water within the day if you want to order that on Amazon. So that's what I mean, meeting people where they're at. How health conscious are they? Are they at a place where they've already realized that there are certain compounds that are causing them disease and so they've eliminated those? Or are they at the beginning of that pathway where it's like, okay, this is your brain.
But where do you go with that? I mean, are we all going to live in Faraday cages and only eat food that we ourselves grow?
Wheat.
And it's kind of like, it's how we have to live in the world, right? And whatever this world is, whatever this matrix is. So where's the happy medium point where we can still exist in normal society, quote unquote, and have an experience of what this is and not have to live in the jungles of Costa Rica, per se?
I don't know.
Right.
I did it in Costa Rica. It worked there. It doesn't here.
Right. But maybe there's other stuff that can work here, or to some extent, or to enough of an extent where we can still have healthy lives and other things like that. I don't know. In Babylon, as we call it.
Well, I think we've touched on, television, electronic devices. I mean, these are things that are strongly influencing people.
So maybe keep those to more of a minimum.
A minimum.
If possible.
Yeah.
And
but then is that a disease?
Well,
is cell phone addiction a disease now?
It could be. I mean, it has been talked about saying that young kids, especially if they're on iPads all day or other things like that, you take it away from them, they exhibit withdrawal-like symptoms.
Yeah.
So that could be, it gets back to whether addiction is a disease or not.
That's what I was asking.
But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. But I can certainly say that, for certain addictions that I've exhibited over my lifetime, if I don't get that thing, I will have a physical withdrawal.
Are you going to smoke your cigars today, or is it because we're talking about addiction?
No, we can't smoke in here, unfortunately.
Oh.
But in the other podcast studio we were in, we were able to some extent. Unfortunately, we cannot smoke these here. We can obviously smoke them later.
Because I was hoping it wasn't just on account of me thinking that I don't.
No.
Because it doesn't bother me.
No, understood. Can we talk about how to specifically tonify or give tonics to our pineal glands to help us out with certain things? What would be good to help us?
I don't think I'm an expert on that. I think, if you are subscribing to the idea that fluoride is somehow causing calcification, then one might want to eliminate.
Minimize that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't use fluoride toothpaste. I don't have it in the water. I argue with my dentist when he's there, and he thinks I'm one of those crazy people, that wears tinfoil hats.
You have mentioned, yes, the tinfoil hats. You have mentioned the idea of stem cell therapy.
I do, I was going to bring that up.
Please.
So in dementia, that's something where it's really been incredible to see how that works. And being an observer in that. I don't administer them. I work with doctors who use them. And so there are specific kinds and types that you have to administer for different types of problems. And also the blood-brain barrier is something that has to be actually made more permeable for neurologic issues with stem cells. And I think this research and many of these individual doctors have been, I think, working with this for many years now, 20 plus years. But now some of the universities are putting out studies showing that, yes, it seems as though certain kinds of stem cell infusions is working for these neurological problems like Parkinson's and like Alzheimer's. So it's really getting this, the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. How do you figure out? How do you know if you have Alzheimer's or not? Well, I would say, there's a blood test. Do you know that?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Quest.
Quest Diagnostics.
Diagnostics.
They have their own.
Some test. It goes on your insurance. Yeah. It tests the amyloid plaque in your bloodstream. The ratio of amyloid, good amyloid to bad amyloid, and if you have a high risk, medium risk, or low risk. And so why wouldn't an individual who has a family member who has Alzheimer's want to know, so then they could do things to potentially lower the amyloid in their blood? And there's actually a new medication, but there's obviously going to be natural ways to do that. But that has been shown to lower the amyloid protein in the blood.
And again, not to get too crazy societal, but that's also why I choose not to have aluminum-based deodorants because they have shown somewhat of a correlation to a potential increase in exposure to Alzheimer or other dementias over time.
I have to take a couple others that I've seen as being high risk. First of all, alcohol. Alcohol is one of the highest risks.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Any particular?
Not red wine. Obviously the red wine thing is supposed to be protective. There's supposed to be neuro and cardioprotective effects of that. But no, it seems as though chronic drinking seems to have a high correlation with going on to develop Alzheimer's. Herpes, cold sores, herpes simplex 1.
Yes.
That lives in the trigeminal nerve and up into the brain. Mm-hmm. And so that's another one that's considered to be a high-risk factor. And also hearing loss.
Hearing loss.
Yeah. So losing your hearing is also – so having poor hearing is also believed to be somewhat associated with it. So there's some other things I've seen and I ask about. But yeah, I mean, that goes into to that group of disorders that we're not going to – try to address as being part of the mental illness constellation. Mm-hmm. Well, I am, but as a large group of providers or practitioners, I don't. I mean, let's take the hypothetical that fluoride does cause calcification of the pineal.
Sure,
we're not saying that's true, but let's
just as hypothetical. Right.
Okay, so let's now broadcast that. Let's get T-shirts and everything. Who's going to disagree with us?
Whoever makes fluoride, I guess.
And all the products that has it in it.
Sure.
And do you think there's a lot of those?
Probably.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, look, yeah, I get it. My understanding is psilocybin is a strong helper to dementia by creating neuroplasticity in the brain. And other things of that nature.
I would love that.
Do you know about that? Has that been shown?
I don't. I have never come across that, but I'll Google it when I get out of here.
Yeah, like there's anecdotal evidence that there. Paul Stamets talks about it quite a bit. And not just that, but a lot of different mushrooms, right? Just not just the magic mushrooms, so to speak, but a lot of mushrooms, cordyceps, lion's mane, all of those that add and increase neuroplasticity in the brain.
The only cases I've seen of individuals that improve their memory and have brain scans look better who have Alzheimer's dementia are those that do stem cells, neuropeptides, but this is going on with, the basic healthy lifestyle that you need to even before you start wasting your money on that, right? Like you're going to waste your money on that if you're going to go out and smoke and drink and everything and think that you're going to take these stem cells and it's magically going to heal you. So you have to get the milieu, the body correct, pH, have vitamins, electrolytes before that's done. So if you get the right ones and they can take up residence, then that along with neurofeedback we've seen improve people's memory on testing. I'm going to be publishing that literature.
So you've said that you don't eat pork.
I don't.
So What's interesting is I have a friend of mine who's studying to be a shaman, curandero, as they call it, and he's learning all the music and all of the stuff in the Amazon with it. He's down in Peru right now. He doesn't eat pork either, and the interesting part is he's done dietas with various plants down there.
I bet he doesn't eat dolphin either.
Probably not.
It's the one.
I don't know how much dolphin there is around there, but or in general.
Are you referring to mahi-mahi or
No,
dolphin?
no, the mammal.
Actual dolphin.
Yeah, the mammal.
Actual dolphin. Okay.
We actually don't, as a species, eat many carnivorous animals. Carnivorous mammals.
Oh, carnivorous mammals.
We don't really tend to eat carnivorous mammals.
That's true enough.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, if you can think of one, I'd be happy
bear. To some extent, people eat bear.
To some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're going to get the deer and the caribou first before they go after the bear.
Oh no, but the idea is that I mean, people have bear steaks and things. But my understanding is it's not very good.
Right. It's not very good. It's oily and red.
Right.
It's right.
But like wild boar and regular
Yeah,
pig,
that's
pigs are
it. And
carnivorous.
there you go.
Yeah.
There's one. There's the only one.
Right. But what he said was when you eat pork, whatever plant medicine you have ingested that is taking up residence, which is what I thought about when you said that, gets kicked out of your body.
Yeah.
Through the eating of the pork. Now, again, that's a metaphysical thing. That's their belief in the
I don't think
dogma,
so. I
whatever
think
the
it's
case may be,
completely
but
scientific.
Talk more about that.
Well, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration. So said Tesla. That energy that pork has, it's like, think about them, like put yourself in like matrix vision for a minute and like take the thing and imagine it has like this, like, you know,
blue pill, red
right,
pill,
and
right,
and then
yeah.
it turns your whole body blue. Well, that's what happens when you take meds or drugs or anything like that. It's imparting a frequency upon you.
Sure.
Right. That also has to, like, so if you're tuning in your own channel, nothing is able to impart a frequency upon you. And so pork is something that I know many cultures have.
Yes.
So many
Prohibitions
cultures
with
have.
it.
I ate pork my whole life. I just had a dream along this whole. I didn't bring this up. It came up in my mind when I was telling you about the butterfly and the rattle. So in this same time period, in the same days, Anna visited me in a dream, literally realistic, like I was there, life-like dream, and just said, "Don't eat pork." And I had done my original brain research with pigs, with swine. They're most closely related to humans. That's why we give swine heart valves, porcine heart valves.
Yes.
That's why we grow tissue on pigs. Like if we have to like put an ear on someone, we'll grow it on a pig. And like I saw this like orc Lord of the Rings transformation of pigs into humans, and she was like, no, they're animal, they're people, they're on Earth living out their karma. That's why they're in the mud. They don't sweat. They're dirty. Never eat pork again. And so I woke up from that dream, and since that since that dream, I have never knowingly or willfully eaten pork.
That is something. That is something.
I mean, I still like the taste of it. Like I look at it on pizza, and I would love to. I still
Pepperoni,
like. I
right.
joke and I say, "Can she come back to me in a dream and say, eat some pork? Because I'll go to town on some ribs. I swear."
And who doesn't love bacon?
I mean, pork chops are good, right? That scene from Pulp Fiction.
Exactly.
So you know, it was a command. It was a covenant between me and my dead daughter that she gave me that seemed so realistic and lifelike that I followed it, and I felt like it's guided me as a principle in my life.
And it's been a net positive for you.
I miss ribs.
Yeah. I get it.
I've gotten really good at making beef short ribs.
Sure, those are delicious.
I mean, you can make
Absolutely.
them. You can, yeah. But I don't have any reason to say it's been a net positive or negative. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the choices had I
done otherwise.
I believe that if I were eating pork for whatever reason, I would not be here.
Understood. Interesting.
Right? Like maybe I would be like, oh, there's the ribs across the street, and I'd be walking across the street and a bus would run me over or something. I don't know, but I've always held this belief that it's keeping me from something.
Fair?
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions you want to?
I was going to ask, so if you could just give a quick synopsis, I'm sure Is a lot of this covered under insurance? I mean, I know some of this is preventative maintenance. If somebody was to require your services or want to do these brain scans and other types of things, is that something that typically the insurance companies will cover? And from that perspective as well, can you just kind of give us a little synopsis of the steps you were alluding to going to Quest and getting, your vitals and meds, or not your meds, but your blood work done, just to kind of look at your vitamin levels or whatever else? Would you just kind of give us a little synopsis of like the steps you would take and what would be best for each person to do?
Sure. Insurance. So yes, it's state by state. I think it's 8 or 9 states right now, like fully will accept this QEEG and neurofeedback as being viable treatments for various different psychiatric or neurologic problems. New Jersey is pretty good with that. Personally, me and our company doesn't directly bill the insurance companies like that. But, our patients often go to the insurance company and get reimbursement.
Sure.
But then if we're doing this through certain doctors, then those doctors might have them on their panel or something. And then, so yes, it is something that is accessible to individuals through their insurance in many cases, especially the clinical exam. The clinical exam consists of, I think, testing, it's huge. You got to check balance, like ultrasound for circulation and, making sure blood flow to the brain is intact and good, and as well as basic things, heart, then lab testing, which would consist of comprehensive metabolic testing, which is, just your sodium, potassium, glucose, that kind of stuff. Pre-diabetes, diabetes, hemoglobin A1C, those tests, because that can affect the brain and the nervous system. Vitamin D, really important. Vitamin B12, really important. Looking at people have Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue is associated with this. Lupus, autoinflammatory problems. It's really from a good history, or else you'll end up just shotgun guessing. But after a good history, you can narrow this down and determine, is there a family history of Alzheimer's? Is there a family history of stroke or Parkinson's? And that helps to narrow it down. And then having the brain scan, the testing. When I say testing, it's you go online and you answer like a 30-minute, 40-minute. It takes you through a series of games or exercises in which it's testing your brain. So having that baseline to determine if a person got better or not. So you have actual performance testing. And then reviewing that with the individual and then coming up with some kind of a plan of action that has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Okay.
Which is really, I think, different. So it's I think, and maybe circling back to men's health a little bit, but the stigma that we're talking about is that there's this problem that's out there that I can't deal with, and therefore I have to go to someone to tell them about it, and they're going to tell me what to do. That's it. That's not a guy. That's not what most men think. I think. I don't know.
No.
Being one, in my experience, I don't want to speak for all, but,
right.
It's just not what you're supposed to do.
As men.
As men.
Traditionally speaking.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well,
so, well, yeah, exactly. That's right. You're supposed to solve your own problems, figure it out, and move forward.
Be self-sufficient. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the this is the concept more that, whether it be from hitting your head, having things happen to you in the environment, being poisoned or whatever, that then you can actually figure out the problem and then have some control over it to be able to deal with it. It's no, you're not going to be in therapy for the next 20 years. So maybe that, there's a less of relinquishing of control.
That's interesting. Or
it's the opposite. It's self-efficacy, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So another way to say it would be you're taking back agency in the process, right? You're taking back your ability to affect the world and your place in it and how you choose to walk that.
And isn't that one of the very essence of the masculine concept?
Absolutely.
It's forging your own path,
right?
Having your own hero's journey, absolutely, absolutely. So, what does it mean to be a man in the modern day?
Ask me, what is a man?
Yes, what is a man? What is a man?
It's a person. No.
Shouldn't be that hard a question, right?
Well, is it? I mean, obviously there's a biological answer that's easy. Sure. It's a human with XY chromosomes, right? That exhibits the physiologic characteristics of a man.
Right.
I mean, that is the obvious and easy answer. But I thought you were asking me a more existential question as to what is man's role in society and the world. And I think that, I think Russian authors freezing their butts off for, years on end wrote stories about that much better than I.
Well, like the Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, maybe, or something like that. No, absolutely. And honestly, thank you so much for coming on today, Freddie. Your story is fascinating. I think the things that you provide are absolutely incredible. We would like to, maybe we come to you and we can just tape on our iPhones how one of these processes takes or something like that, if that's okay with you. And we can include that if that's possible.
I haven't had a physical office setting here yet.
Okay.
I'll have one in August. Love to have you over.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll go to a lodge and try to do it there or something if we can, if that's easier. But we'll figure that out. So again, thank you for being on.
Thanks for inviting me and
thank you so
making
much
it
for
so much
coming
fun
today.
Absolutely. It's so we are brothers of the Arcana, and until next time, I am Alex Aldea.
I am Dave Ferrigno.
I am Freddy Starr.
Dr. Freddy Starr.
Dr. Freddy Starr, thank you so much. See you soon, guys. Take care.
Ciao, and God bless.